Creating real estate videos can feel daunting, time-consuming, and even stressful at times. You'll ask yourself questions like, how do I shoot this home? Or how do I speed up my editing? But all these questions can be eliminated by simply creating and sticking to a process. In this video, I'm going to break down my entire start to finish process of how I efficiently and effectively create my real estate videos. So to help you out, I'm going to give you my 3-step process that keeps me organized and efficient on every project. I'm going to cover my pre-production, production, and post-production workflow, and hopefully you can find something in this video that you can take and incorporate into your own workflow and process. So let's get into it. Now, the pre-production is vastly overlooked by most people. I like to have everything prepped, planned, and pre-made before the shoot even happens. This saves me time both at the shoot and when I get back from the shoot, and it allows me to just dive right into the next steps or whatever needs to get done. Now let's start with the most obvious step, and that is the gear prep. Making sure all my batteries are charged, my SD cards are formatted, all the gear that I need is in my bag, and my gimbal is already balanced. Y'all, this is a super underrated tip. Make sure that you pre-balance your gimbal before the shoot. Being able to rock up to a shoot and just slap your camera on the gimbal will save you a couple minutes, but it also shows your client that you know what's up and you're ready to go. Next is planning and scripting. If I haven't already discussed this with my client, I'll write down some hook ideas that we can use for both property video and the short form reel. This can be a huge time saver on site to have some pre-written hooks and ideas ready to go, just in case your client shows up and doesn't have any ideas, or you just don't like theirs. And my final pre-production step is digital organization. This includes setting up folders and projects so that, again, everything is ready to go. I'll set up a folder for the project and then create subfolders for music and sound effects, assets, and footage. In the footage folder, I'll go even deeper for camera specific folders, which usually is just my drone and my R6 Mark II. And then in that R6 Mark II folder, I'm gonna separate that into horizontal and vertical. Once the folders are created, I'll go set up my Final Cut Pro project. This isn't much, but it just includes naming the project, creating timelines for the different deliverables, and then importing any logos if I have any already. And finally, I'll go set up a Dropbox folder for the project, which is what I use for delivery. Moving on to the production stage and how I optimize my time at the property shoot. The first thing I'll do is just a simple walkthrough with my client, and this allows me to get a feel of the space as we're moving through it, but I can also ask them questions. Questions like, what are the features and what are things that should or should not be included in the video. From there, I'm gonna shoot all the footage of the realtor or my client. This includes, but is not exclusive to, an intro, an outro, hooks for short form content, and then any integration B-roll. The reason why I do that stuff first is because that's the only stuff that I actually need my client for. Once that's all done, if they want, they can just leave instead of having to stick around for a couple more hours while I'm shooting the property. If that's not their thing, they can just dip. Then I start shooting the property. I start off horizontal and I go through the entire property on my 15 to 35 millimeter lens, shooting all my wide shots and my mid perspectives. I like to start on the main floor and in the main spaces. The way that I create videos, these videos are very heavily focused on the main spaces and highlights. The smaller rooms are really not that important for the video. So once I'm done the main floor, I'll move upstairs or downstairs, again, focusing first on the main spaces and then into kind of those secondary rooms. And then finally, I'll finish off with exterior shots. Once I've gone through the property once, I'll switch to my 24 to 105 millimeter lens and shoot all my detail shots. This time I'll start on the exterior, so that way when I actually bring all my footage into Final Cut Pro, all my exterior clips are already bunched together. Then I'll go through the home in basically the same order that I did on my 15 to 35. However, when I'm shooting details, I only shoot detail shots of the main spaces, because this is what takes up the most screen time in the video, and then it also saves me some time at the shoot and in the edit. Once all the details are done, I actually switch back to my 15 to 35mm lens, and then I also switch my gimbal to vertical, and I'll actually go through the property again for a third time filming native vertical footage. And for vertical content, I only shoot the main spaces since these videos are so short, and any tight detail shots I'll usually crop from the horizontals. And finally, to wrap up the shoot, I'll finish off with the drone shots. I also like to bring my AirPods with me to shoots, and I'll listen to some chill music, and I find that kind of boosts my productivity and creativity as well. And I can kind of shoot homes a little bit faster than I would maybe without music. My entire shooting process typically takes me about 2.5 to 3 hours. As we move into the final stages of the project, this is where a lot of time can be wasted. As of right now, I'm actually editing all of my own videos, so streamlining my process and being efficient is key. Now, I'm not gonna go into a full deep dive into my step-by-step editing process in this video, but I'll give you the stripped down version. After I've imported all the footage into Final Cut Pro and I've dragged it onto my timeline, I'll go through the selects process. This is harvesting the best parts of each clip until I have all the clips that I deem worthy of potentially making it into the property video. After selects, I'll find my music. I like to do this after going through the selects, as I now have a good feeling of the footage and a little bit of a vision of how I want the video to look. I like to use Epidemic Sound for all my music and sound effects. They've got a really great and diverse selection, and it's always really easy to find what I'm looking for. This is not sponsored, by the way. I just really like what they got. Next is the most time-consuming part of the entire editing process, and that is the sequencing. Building out the intro and constructing the flow of the video takes careful consideration and intentional clip placement. This is the most important part of the whole process. Once all the sequencing is done, I like to move on to sound design. This includes editing any agent's audio, as well as adding in sound effects for any transitions and ambience. Once I'm happy with how the audio all sounds, I'll move into the color correction and color grading stage. I'll first add a Rec 709 conversion LUT over the entire sequence, and then on top of that, I'll add my grade, and then I'll go through individually to each clip to make sure everything is perfect and looks exactly the way I want it to. Usually, as I'm going through and correcting all those individual clips, that's when I'll add any stabilization to any of the clips that need it. And finally, I'll add in any titles, transitions, or effects such as zooms, motion blur, logos, etc. This whole editing process typically takes me about 2 to 3 hours. That, my friends, is it. I'll export the deliverables and transfer those assets into Dropbox, which I then send off to the clients, followed shortly by an invoice. If there's anything that you do differently or think that I should try to incorporate into my own workflow, leave it down in the comments. So with that all said, I will see you in the next one. Peace.